All right, we have officially gotten another beta build for Midnight, and in this video, I want to just kind of discuss some of the tank changes and my, I guess, like opinions of it. And I just kind of want to like nerd out for a bit. So let's just jump into it. Now, luckily, Blizzard has finally addressed tanks. Tanks have been kind of avoided the last couple of beta builds. It's been kind of rough out here for most tank players, getting pretty fed up with the lack of changes outside of like minor like tweaks and hot fixes and bug fixes. But let's start off with the Death Knight actually. So moving into it, Blood had, I don't want to call it an aura buff, but they definitely had some like, most of their core kit has been buffed by some margin, anywhere between 15% all the way up to 30%. So starting off, Death Strike increased by 20%, Blood Boil increased by 15, Heart Strike increased by 20, and Death and Decay increased by 25, which has some implications with things like Desecrate. Consumption damage was also increased by 30%, putting a little bit more power into the consumption cooldown in your talent tree, which might make this the play again. Consumption does feel kind of bad without giving rune economy back, but it's also not a terrible button to hit in my opinion. So we'll see what ends up happening. I'll let the big tank theory crafters actually probably figure that one out. We also got some general like defensive buffs as well. So Bone Shield armor increased by 20%. I believe from what I've been told, this does make Bone Shield armor. This buff is probably better than the original one that they never ended up implementing. So this is actually a pretty solid change. Death Knight, I feel like, at least in Mythic Plus, struggles against kind of your raw auto attacks since you're taking them so frequently throughout the course of a run. Generally, through most runs, a tank is going to take anywhere, it depends on the dungeon, but anywhere between 65 to 80% damage is just melee attacks. Again, like I said, it depends. There's nuance there, but having a Bone Shield armor increase is very good. They also got a base stamina increase with their Blood Fortification passive. And finally, Dance of Midnight rank 1 now has an additional 100% chance to trigger. Now, for those who don't remember or don't know, your rank 1 Dance of Midnight is while you're inside of your cooldown, when you parry an attack, you have a next chance to basically retaliate, getting a buff that's going to cause your next Heart Strike to cost no runes and deal 150% increased damage. Now, this is obviously really good because it saves your rune economy from, spinning through it too quickly while still generating you. I believe it generates runic power. Maybe maybe I should probably test that, but essentially it's going to assist in your rotation with your kind of rune spending, making it free. So getting buffed is also a good thing. My plan is to eventually, probably this weekend at some point, get back into like a stress testing. While I haven't played Death Knight that much over the last couple weeks, I am excited to kind of get back into that kind of testing environment where I can really see what these changes mean. All in all, though, big buffs. This is a good sign for Blood Death Knight enjoyers. Moving on, we also have Demon Hunter. This class didn't get touched too much. They did actually receive some nerfs here. Reaver's Glaive was reduced by 10%, and Reaver's Mark now increases their damage taken by 5% instead of 6%. So a small nerf here. Outside of that, nothing too crazy going on. So we're just going to skip right down to Druid. Now, Druid had some interesting things because they not only buffed like the base class, but they also targeted a lot of things in the Guardian Druid kit. So let's kind of walk through these here together. So first off, Matted Fur, this absorption has been increased by 100%. And Matted Fur lasts 15 seconds instead of 8. So it gives you time to actually absorb the full value. This is a small absorb you're going to gain after popping anything from Bark Skin to Survival Instincts. Now, is this a talent you play all the time? Maybe not. But having the additional absorb adds value to hitting Bark Skin and Survival Instincts. Regrowth Direct Healing reduced by 15%, and Wild Growth Healing increased by 25%. Now, it's very infrequent where you're actually casting a Wild Growth, and Regrowth Direct Healing doesn't, honestly, this nerf shouldn't affect you too much. It felt like Guardian Druid was already doing a ton of overhealing through Drumus and Arius, plus Frenzied Regeneration, so the Direct Healing isn't probably too substantial. Like this is, yeah, it's a nerf, but it's probably not that impactful. Moving into the actual Guardian Druid changes, they got a armor increase to their Iron Fur, which, I think this is, it's always good to see buffs like this, making them a little bit tankier per stack of Iron Fur, giving a little bit more emphasis to each rage point that is being spent here. But I don't think this changes any kind of break point for how many Iron Fur stacks you actually want to maintain. Now, Armor DR, I think hard caps at 85 and has a strong diminishing return after 70. So anywhere between there is like generally pretty good to sit, except you're getting there with like 4, maybe 5 stacks of Iron Fur. So honestly, it doesn't change the stack requirement to hit breakpoints. And so I don't think this matters that much. We do see some specific damage allocation to specifically like Red Moon and Moonfire, 30% buff there. Lunar Beam also being bumped up by 30%. As I've talked about on this channel before, Elun's Chosen has been a substantially underperforming spec over the entire course of alpha and beta. So seeing these direct changes are something that we'd probably predict, and Mangle is also being increased by 30%. Does this fix everything that I think is wrong with Guardian Druid? Not necessarily. I think Elun's Chosen has some other issues still, but again, I want to get back into testing this class specifically before I talk about that in detail. Innate Resolve was nerfed. Decreasing the amount of Frenzied Regen is going to heal you for. Instead of being up to 120%, it's now only up to 80% additional. Frenzied Regen now heals you for 32% of your max health over duration instead of 40, so this is also getting nerfed down. Frenzied Regeneration's cooldown also reduced from to 26 seconds, was 36. So you're going to be hitting Frenzied Regen more often, but it's getting cut down. So the overall potency of the heal is still going to be good or over the course of the key, but you're going to probably notice that every single cast is going to feel a little bit weaker, but again, you're hitting it more often. So they did actually tune back Ursoc's Fury. This was buffed up from 25% to 40, and now it's being cut back down to 30% of the damage being dealt by Thrash and Maul, and presumably Ravage as well. And fortunately enough, Moonless Night was also increased, actually doubled from 20% up to 40%. This is direct damage against afflicted targets by Moonfire, will deal more damage. This can be ran with Druid of the Claw, but more often than not, this is going to have more of an impact on Elun's Chosen for various reasons. Lastly, Killing Blow causes Maul and Raise to deal up to 100% increased damage was 75%, so a small buff to this talent. I don't know if they're still having the bug. Correct me if I'm wrong, or any bear mains out there. Basically, from my understanding, it wasn't affecting Raise specifically. And on top of that, the additional rage you consume isn't contributing to cooldown reduction through Ursoc's guidance. And so if those things are fixed at this point, and maybe I'm just not aware, I think these are very good changes to Guardian Druid as well, and I think they help address some of the issues that they have been having up to this point. All right, anyways, moving down, I know this is the big one that I think a lot of people are expecting me to talk about because, you know, I kind of main Brewmaster. But let's get down here. So I'm going to actually come back up to Master of Harmony, and let's actually start with the base changes. So Keg Smash, for some reason, has been buffed by 40%. This is an extremely sizable increase that I'm actually kind of surprised with, because Keg Smash is already doing so much of our damage. Now, compared to things like Flurry Strikes, it's, you know, it's comparable. I think they want to make Keg Smash definitely the main ability you hit in kind of all circumstances. We're also seeing a 20% buff to Spinning Crane Kick and Tiger Palm, our fillers, and Blackout Kick being increased by 20%. There's been an issue, or maybe a design choice that Blizzard isn't like super fond of, where there are builds and a lot of people have been ignoring Blackout Kick and also ignoring essentially fillers, where fillers are really just there to be a filler, not part of your rotation. Brewmaster has never really been like that up until the midnight beta testing, and these changes are hopefully to incentivize maybe a larger focus on this damage, especially in single target. So coming to Master of Harmony, though, this is probably the only tank that's getting adjustments to their hero town in the state. So Meditative Focus was increased by, basically it was just like doubled. So what it was doing is it was causing your Blackout combo or your Press the Advantage to have like double effectiveness. What they're doing instead is, well, not instead, but they have buffed the amount Tiger Palm is going to be affected by up to an extra 50%. So 100% more damage on that instead of, you know, what it was. And it increases Press the Advantage nature damage by 100% instead of 50. Unfortunately, this doesn't really solve any issues, which I'll get to in a second. Wave 1,000 Strikes increases your Vitality Sword by 60%, was 30%, and Path of Resurgence increases Vitality Sword by 50%, was 25%. So when you take a look at Master of Harmony, so Wave 1,000 Strikes, the problem with how it was working is that it also is contributing damage from Rising Sun Kick, which was obviously not the case since they now have removed it. So buffing it up to 60% is also good. So this additional vitality will help you store up like a larger dots. You're going to be able to expel it with your Keg Smash casts based on your capstone, applying the dot more frequently, and then you're going to have larger shields whenever you do end up hitting Celestial Brew, which you're going to be hitting a lot now because, you know, you're playing your Apex town, which is giving you additional cooldown reduction. Or not from the Apex. Well, I guess technically from the Apex, you're getting resets on Keg. So the last change that they did, Aspect of Harmony now generates vitality based on 25% of the damage dealt and 12% of its effective healing, was 15 and 77% respectively. So this has been increased by 10% on the damage, or about 35%, 50%, 10? No, I don't know math. Basically, it's been buffed. I'm going to go on like a small tangent really quick about this. So the problem with specifically Master of Harmony, is that these changes don't actually address the core issue. And what I mean by that is that the core issue isn't the damage tuning, it's the fact that its design just does not work. It has friction with the class. I'm going to go to... We'll just go over to these training dummies, I guess. So the whole gameplay loop of Master of Harmony is that as you deal damage, you will gain vitality, and then when you keg smash, it will dump this vitality onto your target, basically applying a dot, which is fine. Like, it is what it is. The dot will change. It's the damage it's doing per second is going to be based on how much damage you're dumping onto the target via keg smashing. And when you eventually drink Celestial Brew, it'll dump all of that damage into the target based on the damage you're dealing. So the idea is that you're always going to have the dot on the target. Now, if we jump over here into a pool of enemies, now your keg smash is only going to be going on the target you're hitting with it, your primary target, but it'll eventually start spreading. As you can see, I'm tabbing through, and you're going to see all of these different targets are going to start getting afflicted by the aspect of Harmony dot, which is good, right? But what the problem with the class isn't the damage. Like, yeah, the tuning was a little bit low, but the problem is that you gain Harmonic Surge way, way, way faster than you can discharge them. And also, as you can see, Harmonic Surge is doing very little damage compared to just like the dot of Aspect of Harmony. And so what feels bad is that like you're not really able to Tiger Palm frequently enough to keep these stacks low, especially with the resets on keg smash through empty the cellar, or sorry, empty the barrel from your apex talent, but also just the fact that you're getting additional cooldown reduction because of your apex talent to lower celestial fusion or celestial brew. So now you're just sitting at 6 stacks permanently, and that feels bad. Like, these buffs I'm all for. I think it's going to pull it a little bit more in line. But the biggest flaw that we're currently running into is simply the fact that you're gaining more stacks than you can actually discharge. And so if there was a way to discharge more of these stacks, like let's say Exploding Keg discharged all of them, or Keg Smash built one and Blackout Kick also discharged one, so Blackout and Tiger Palm. And so that would at least make it feel a little bit more cohesive as like a gameplay loop. But in its current state, what ends up happening is, especially once you're in combat and you're drinking brews and you're dodging and you're getting resets and you're purifying, you're always at 6 stacks, which again, just feels bad. So I think Blizzard needs to address that issue. And the easiest way to do that is to give another ability give an ability the chance to proc removing one of these Harmonic Surge or potential energy buffs. But until that happens, I just can't see a world where this will be good. Outside of like maybe single target raid, like once again, we're going to fall into that kind of the same loop where Shado-pan's better for keys and Master of Harmony's better for raid. So I'm for these changes. Don't get me wrong. These changes are good. The buffs for the base damage, very good. There's still some bugs like with Facepalm, for example. But overall, I think Blizzard really needs to address this in the next coming weeks, or unfortunately, Master of Harmony is probably going to be in a very bad spot. So my plan is to do some Mythic Plus testing now that the numbers have been buffed up a little bit, especially with Keg Smash. So the problem that Master of Harmony was having before this week is that like threat was just an issue. Keg Smash like wasn't hitting hard enough, and you didn't have frequent Flurry Strike procs on top of that to maintain threats. With these buffs to the just baseline Keg Smash, I think it should be a little bit easier. Anyways, I don't want to rant too much longer about that. I'm going to probably do a more dedicated Brewmaster video this week at some point, so let's kind of move on. Templar saw a minor buff to Hammer of Light and Empyrean Hammer damage in their Templar hero talent, and their Apex talent was actually buffed on the initial target by, a substantial amount, from 20% up to 50%. So primary damage being upped a little bit, and then armor granted by Shield of Righteous was actually being reduced, which is a little surprising to me since I felt like their survivability wasn't like crazy good. It was like good. It's good, but I don't think it was like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just bad at Paladin, but it was like, felt fine. So yeah, these changes I don't think it'll make Templar better. Because I think what works for Lightsmith is the fact that it has like this crazy utility and consistency on its damage, where this is like more cooldown based. So I'd be curious to see which one actually ends up being better. All right, last but not least, let's do Protection Warrior. So this actually had a couple of changes. So we not only had a hero talent adjustment, so practice strikes now increases. It has bonus damage up by 5%. Well, I should say 50%. They buffed it from 10% to 15. So pretty solid there. Mountain Thane also saw some changes as well. So ground current damage increased by 150%, lightning strike damage increased by 50%, but Thunder Blast was reduced, kind of taking the power out of that and allocating it to these other kind of passive things that are happening whenever you do end up Thunder Blasting or Thunderclapping. Unfortunately, Protection's seeing actually a fair bit of nerfs. Deep Wounds is being reduced by 30%. Shield Slam being reduced by 20%, Execute being reduced by 20%, and I guess those are the damage nerfs. Ignore Pain damage prevented increased by 5%, so making them a little bit tankier in their absorb value. Fueled by Violence has been increased to 110, up from 85, hopefully to kind of outweigh the Deep Wounds reduction here. Now, Deep Wounds only really applied to Execute and or Post Demolish through the Decimator talent. But this is good. I think giving them a little bit more self-healing through Rend and Deep Wounds is a good thing. And my favorite change of all is Indomitable is finally like kind of making its way back into the meta since like Legion when it was a legendary. Maybe technically BFA, I think you also played it, but Indomitable now increases your max health by 10% instead of 6, and it heals you for 1% of your health every 15 rage spent instead of 20. So a 25% buff to this in terms of its healing potential. So I'm a big fan of Indomitable. I think it makes sense that as you spend rage, you're like just like fighting through the pain. I think this is very thematic. I like this a lot. I'm excited again, like to see how it performs in stress testing. Ignore Pain, Fueled by Violence, and Indomitable all being increased should it increase their survivability, and they're pulling back their single target damage just by a little bit through things like Shield Slam and Execute nerfs. Anyways, those are all the tank changes for this week. I will be streaming as much as I possibly can, specifically like this weekend. So if you want to see me testing out these other tanks, just, stop on by. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about these changes down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.